When I arrived at my son's wedding, he was waiting for me at the door and said, "I didn't invite you, Mom. The whole family decided that you are no longer part of us. Please, leave." I smiled and replied calmly, "That's fine, son, but don't forget to check your phone. I'm leaving." When he looked down at his phone, you know that moment when you feel like your heart stops, but you're still standing? That was exactly what I felt when my son, Henry, extended his arm in front of my body, blocking me from entering the church. I looked impeccable. I had chosen a deep teal dress that cost me $800, a fortune for someone who had always lived simply. I spent 3 hours at the salon that morning, manicure done, hair swept up in an elegant chignon that the stylist swore would be perfect for the mother of the groom. Imported perfume that I had saved for years for a special occasion. And what occasion could be more special than the wedding of my only son? The church was gorgeous. White flowers covered every inch of the entrance. The guests were entering in their black tie attire, laughing, taking photos. I watched all of it with a nervous smile on my face, clutching the leather handbag that had belonged to my mother. Inside, my cell phone vibrated incessantly, messages I didn't answer, calls I ignored. I knew what was about to happen. When I climbed the steps of the entrance, my son appeared like a shadow in the doorway. Henry looked different, thinner, his face tense, deep dark circles under his eyes. The charcoal gray suit he was wearing was clearly too expensive for our lifestyle, and I knew perfectly well who had chosen it. Behind him, 2 security guards in black suits crossed their arms as if I were a threat, as if being a mother was synonymous with danger. "Mom," he started, but his voice cracked. He swallowed hard, looking away. I didn't say anything. I just waited. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my temples, but I kept my face serene. "I didn't invite you to be here." Silence. People around us started to notice. Curious glances, murmurs. The whole family decided. He paused as if the words burned his mouth. "Decided that you are no longer part of us. Please, Mom, leave." I felt every word like a knife, but I didn't shed a single tear. Not there, not in front of them. I looked inside the church and saw her, Jessica, the bride, standing between the pews in a fitted white dress, showing off a body she always insisted on flaunting. She held my gaze with that little smirk. That smile of someone who thinks she has already won. I took a deep breath. "That's fine, son." My voice came out calm, firm. "But don't forget to check your phone." Henry frowned, confused. He opened his mouth to say something, but I was already turning around. I walked down the steps slowly, one by one, head held high, posture impeccable. Just as my mother, Eleanor, taught me, dignity bows to no one. I got into the car that the rideshare driver had kept running. I closed the door, and only then, when the car started to pull away from that beautiful church and that son whom I no longer recognized, did a single tear roll down my cheek. But it wasn't a tear of defeat. It was the tear of someone who has just dropped the bomb. Because inside that phone that I asked Henry to check was everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every dirty secret that Jessica had hidden from him for 2 whole years. And in 10 minutes, when he opened that scheduled message, the wedding she had dreamed of so much was going to crumble like a sandcastle. But for you to understand how I arrived at this moment, I need to go back in time, back to the day my husband, Arthur, closed his eyes for the last time and left me alone in this world with a single request. Protect our son, Evelyn. Even from himself. If you want to discover what was on that phone and how a 68-year-old mother managed to turn the tables on the most manipulative daughter-in-law you've ever seen, listen closely, because this story is just beginning, and the worst hasn't happened yet. 2 years before that day at the church, I was sitting in a hospital chair that squeaked with every movement. The smell of disinfectant burned my nose, the fluorescent lights flickered on the ceiling, and my husband, Arthur, held my hand with a strength I didn't know he still had. 63 years of life, 42 years of marriage. Everything summarized in that cold, white room. The cancer was cruel, fast, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Pancreatic cancer, the one doctors call silent, because when you realize it, it's already too late. Arthur was always a discreet, hard-working man. He woke up at 5 a.m. every day to open the small auto parts manufacturing plant we built together, brick by brick, in the industrial district of Chicago. I stayed in the office handling the administrative side, the accounts, the suppliers. We were a team, he and I. We complemented each other, but nobody knew the extent of it. To Henry, to the neighbors, to the world, Arthur was just another blue-collar worker. We lived in a simple 1,300-square-foot house in a middle-class suburb, modest car, clothes without logos, dinners at home, never at expensive restaurants. Arthur taught me that. Evelyn, money screams when you want to show off, and whispers when you want to save, and we save. Promise me something, Arthur whispered that last night, his voice raspy from the morphine. Don't let anyone know about the money yet. Our son needs to mature first. I promised, even though I didn't fully understand. 3 days later, I buried my husband under a fine drizzle that seemed to weep with me. Henry was by my side holding a black umbrella. He was 40 years old then. Single, working at a tech company with a reasonable salary, nothing extraordinary. He lived in a rented apartment on the north side of the city. After the funeral, I sat down with our attorney, Augustus Ramsey, a 70-year-old man who had known Arthur since we were young. Mrs. Evelyn, I'm going to be direct with you, he said while opening a thick folder. The estate your husband left is considerable. Considerable was a euphemism. The factory, with over 35 years of operation, was valued at $2.5 million. The house we lived in, which Arthur had paid off 20 years ago and completely remodeled 5 years ago, was valued at $650,000. We had a 2-bedroom apartment rented out in Lincoln Park, generating $2,500 a month. Investments in financial instruments totaled $1.2 million, plus a small plot of land in rural Illinois, an inheritance from Arthur's parents, valued at $150,000. Total, roughly $5 million. I sat paralyzed, staring at those figures. And there is more, continued Mr. Ramsey, pushing a sealed envelope toward me. Arthur's will is very clear. You can open it now. But he asked that you wait for the right moment to show it to Henry. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Arthur's handwriting was there, firm as always. Evelyn, my love, if you are reading this, it is because I am gone. I leave everything in your hands because I trust you as I have trusted no one else. Henry will receive his share when he is ready, not when he reaches a certain age, not when he gets married, but when he demonstrates the maturity to value what we built with sacrifice. You will know when that moment comes. Until then, protect our legacy and protect yourself. Not everyone who says they love, loves truly. Yours forever, Arthur. I folded the letter and put it in the bottom of my purse. I decided not to say anything to Henry. Not yet. I kept living in the same house, with the same car, the same routine. The factory remained under the management of a trusted manager Arthur had trained for years. The profits arrived in my account every month around $8,000 net, but I remained discreet. I spent little and invested the rest. Henry never asked. He assumed I lived on his father's Social Security and perhaps some savings. He offered me financial help a couple of times, and I politely declined. I'm fine, son, don't worry. I believed I was doing the right thing, protecting the legacy until my son was ready to receive it. But then, 6 months after the burial, Henry appeared at my house on a Sunday afternoon. He was different, smiling too much. That kind of goofy smile a man in love has. Mom, I need to introduce you to someone. I opened the door and saw a blonde woman. Tanned, artificial, with 6-inch heels, a dress too tight for a Sunday afternoon. She looked a little over 30 at most. Red acrylic nails, heavy makeup, and a glint in her eyes that I couldn't decipher at that moment. Hi, mother-in-law, she said with a high-pitched voice, extending a handful of rings. I'm Jessica. Finally, a pleasure to meet you. I squeezed her cold, calculating hand, and in that same instant, without consciously knowing it, something inside me shuddered. Because I had just met the person who would try to destroy everything Arthur and I had built. The question I couldn't answer that Sunday afternoon was who she really was, and why my son, always so sensible, was completely blind to the danger that had just walked through the door of our lives. Jessica walked into my living room as if she already owned the place. She didn't take off her heels, didn't ask if she could sit. She simply flopped onto the 3-seater sofa Arthur and I had bought 15 years ago. She crossed her legs and began examining every corner of the house with hawk eyes. "What a charming house, Mrs. Evelyn," she said. But the tone didn't match the words. Very vintage, right? These old things have a sentimental value no money can pay for. Vintage. She called my house vintage. Henry was radiant, sitting beside her like an obedient puppy. He held her hand with that protective gesture that tightened my chest. My son had never been one to have many relationships. He was shy, focused on work, and suddenly he appears with a woman who looked like she came out of a reality TV show. "Mom, Jessica is a digital influencer," Henry announced with pride. "She has over 28,000 followers on Instagram." Jessica let out a little laugh and waved her hand, feigning modesty, but I saw the glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Oh, babe, it's nothing," she said. "I just share a little bit of my routine. Fashion, travel, those things." She shot me a calculated look. "Do you have Instagram, Mrs. Evelyn?" "No, dear. I don't have patience for those technologies." I imagine she smiled. "Your generation didn't grow up with that, right? It must be hard keeping up with the new generations." There was the first jab. Subtle. Accurate. I served coffee and some banana bread I had baked that morning. Jessica took a tiny piece, took an almost symbolic bite, and left the rest on the plate. "So yummy, mother-in-law, but I can't overdo it," she said, patting her flat stomach. "I have to watch my figure. You know, I work with my image." While we talked, I noticed something strange. Jessica couldn't sit still. Her eyes wandered. She looked at the antique clock on the wall, the bookshelf, the family photographs, and above all, the mahogany desk that was in a corner of the living room. "Henry told me Mr. Arthur had his own business. Didn't he?" she asked with apparent naturalness while checking her phone. "It wasn't a workshop. It was an auto parts factory," I corrected. "Oh, how cool. One of those small artisanal ones," she said. "Small. Artisanal. It was a good business," I replied dryly. "A very good business. Of course." She nodded too quickly. "Family businesses always have special value. Do you still manage it, or do you have a trusted manager?" I saw how her eyes shone, like a snake that has just smelled its prey. "How wonderful that you can handle everything alone." She leaned forward. "I imagine it's a lot of responsibility. Papers, taxes, all that. At your age, it must be tiring." "No? At your age." Second jab. Henry noticed nothing. He was entertained with his phone, surely answering work messages. "I manage well," I replied, maintaining a polite tone. Jessica got up from the sofa and started walking around the room. She ran her hand over the furniture. She stopped in front of an old photo of when Henry was 5 years old. "You've always lived here, for 38 years. Wow," she laughed. "I bet you've thought about moving to something smaller, more practical. You know, houses are a lot of work when one gets older." "Older." Third. "I've never thought about it," I lied, because I was already starting to understand the game. She kept walking and suddenly did something that put me on alert. She opened the drawer of the desk. "Oh, sorry," she said, closing it quickly. I thought it was a picture frame. What a habit of mine to touch everything. But I saw it. I saw how she took a quick look at what was inside. Documents, receipts, factory papers that I had left on the desk. Henry finally looked up. "Jess, babe, stop looking through my mom's things," he said, laughing, but without conviction. "Sorry, mother-in-law," she replied, returning to his side and hanging onto my son's arm. "It's just that I adore houses with history, and this one has so much." The rest of the afternoon was more of the same. Casual questions about the house, about Arthur's retirement, about future plans, fishing for information as if it were nothing, dropping poisoned compliments between sentence and sentence. When they finally left, it was already night. Henry hugged me at the door. "Did you like her, Mom?" I looked at Jessica, who was already in the car, absorbed in her phone. "She seems interesting." That was all I could say. I knew it had been fast, but Henry smiled in that way that broke my heart. "I think she is the right person, you know?" I squeezed my son's hand. "If you are happy, son, I am happy." I lied again. Because that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew exactly what had just entered my life. A woman who didn't love my son, a woman who had seen something in that drawer, some information, some number, and was now calculating, calculating how much the life Arthur and I had built was worth. What I didn't know at that moment was that Jessica was already 3 steps ahead and that in less than 3 months, she would make a request that would change everything between my son and me forever. 3 months after that afternoon, my phone rang at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. It was Henry, his voice trembling with emotion. "Mom, I proposed to her and she said yes." I sat up in bed, still groggy from sleep. 3 months, 90 days of a relationship, and he was already engaged. "Son, isn't that very fast?" "When you know, he replied with that irritating certainty of someone in love. "Jessica said something very beautiful yesterday, that you don't need to wait years to be sure when 2 souls meet." 2 souls meet. Jessica had filled my son's head with those cheap self-help phrases. "And when will the wedding be?" "In 4 months. Jessica doesn't want to wait long. She says she already wasted too much time in relationships that didn't work. 4 months from engagement to ceremony. It barely gave time to know her family well, to know who she really was. But I bit my tongue and said, "Congratulations, son. I'm happy for you." 2 weeks later, they appeared at my house again. Jessica was different, more confident, as if she now had rights she didn't have before. She sat on the same sofa, but this time she put her bare feet on the coffee table. "Mother-in-law, we have to talk about the wedding," she said while taking her phone out of her bag. "I already chose the venue, the church, the dress. Everything top tier, obviously. After all, you only get married once, right?" Henry smiled uncomfortably beside her. "Jess, get straight to the point." She sighed dramatically. Okay. Look, Mrs. Evelyn, we are starting a life together, and a wedding costs money, lots of money." She looked directly at me. "So we thought that since you are the groom's mother, how about you help us with the expenses?" That wasn't a request. It was a demand disguised as informal chat. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. Jessica typed something on her phone and turned the screen toward me. $10,000. I felt the air leave me for a second. "It's a party for 150 guests," she explained, as if justifying an investment. "Full banquet, premium open bar, magazine-worthy decoration. We can't do less than that, mother-in-law. People expect quality." I looked at Henry. He looked away. "Son, do you agree with this amount?" "Mom, I know it's a lot." He scratched the back of his neck, nervous. "But Jessica's mom already offered $20,000. It would be fair for you to pitch in too, right?" $20,000. Jessica's mom. Something didn't add up. A woman who supposedly gave that amount for her daughter's wedding, yet the daughter lived in a 1-bedroom rental on the south side of the city. An influencer with 28,000 followers who barely managed to close brand deals, but I swallowed my suspicion. "Okay, I will transfer the $10,000. Jessica clapped like a child. "Oh, mother-in-law, I knew I could count on you." The next day, I made the transfer. Henry called me that night to thank me. His voice sounded weird, forced, as if he were reading a script. I thought that with that, everything would end, that after that investment in his wedding, things would return to normal. But 2 weeks later, Jessica called alone. "Hi, mother-in-law. Everything good?" "Everything good, Jessica." "Do you need something?" "Oh, it's a little uncomfortable to talk about this." She paused, calculating. "But we crunched the numbers again, and the money you gave isn't going to be enough. The banquet price went up. The decorator charged more because the church is big. You know how it is." I clenched my fists. "How much more?" "Just $8,000 more. That way, we close everything out nicely." $8,000. Just? Jessica, that totals $18,000. "It's a lot of money, I know, mother-in-law, but my mom already gave her share. I can't ask her for more." Her voice became syrupy. "And you wouldn't want your only son's wedding to be half done, right?" It was emotional blackmail, pure and simple. "I'm going to see what I can do." "Oh, thanks, mother-in-law. I knew you would understand." I hung up and stared at the living room wall, the same wall where Arthur's photo was smiling. That smile that seemed to say, "I warned you, Evelyn." In the end, I transferred the $8,000, not because it seemed right, but because it was my son's wedding, and mothers make sacrifices, even when we know we are being manipulated. When the money hit their account, I waited for a thank you, a call, a message. Nothing. Jessica disappeared for 3 weeks. Henry sent short messages, always busy. Mom, talk later. Mom, running around. Mom, Jessica is very stressed with preparations. And then, 1 week before the civil wedding, the courthouse ceremony, I discovered it by chance through a post on Jessica's Instagram. I received a WhatsApp message. It was a screenshot. Jessica and Henry at City Hall, already married. The caption read, "Intimate and special ceremony, only with the most important people." I wasn't there. My son had gotten married and didn't even invite me. I called Henry 5 times. All went to voicemail. Finally, he returned the call near midnight. "Mom, sorry. It was all very rushed. Jessica wanted something small, just family." "I am your family, Henry." Silence on the other end of the line. "Yes, Mom. But Jessica has a different idea of what family is, and I need to respect that." I hung up the phone, and that night, for the first time, I understood that my son was no longer mine. Now he belonged to her. What I didn't imagine was that this was just the beginning, because Jessica didn't just want my money, she wanted everything. And the next request was going to hurt much more than $18,000. The church wedding was scheduled for 3 months later, but after the civil marriage, something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was like poison dripping drop by drop into water. First, the Sunday lunches. For 40 years, every Sunday was sacred in our family. Arthur grilled steaks in the backyard. I made rice, salad, that special potato salad with 3 types of potatoes. Henry arrived at noon and stayed until 5 p.m. We talked, laughed, watched football together. After Arthur died, I kept the tradition. Henry kept coming. It was my only day with him. Until Jessica entered the scene. The first Sunday after the civil wedding, Henry canceled at the last minute. "Mom, Jess doesn't feel well. I think it's a migraine." "Okay, get better." Second Sunday. "Mom, we already agreed to eat at Jessica's mom's house. I forgot to tell you." Third Sunday. "Mom, I need to rest. The week was heavy." Fourth Sunday. He didn't call, simply didn't show up. I called him 6 times. All went to voicemail. I sent a message. "Son, is everything okay? I'm worried." The answer arrived 4 hours later. "Everything is fine, Mom. Talk later." A conversation that never happened, and then the excuses started getting more and more worn out. Work meeting on Sunday. Last-minute trip. Jessica didn't feel comfortable. Jessica was tired. Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. Everything was Jessica. I tried to be understanding. After all, they were newlyweds. They needed time together. I understood that, or at least tried to understand it, until the blow that really hurt arrived. I discovered it by pure coincidence thanks to Mrs. Connie, my gossipy neighbor who saw everything. "I saw him leaving Jessica's mother's house last week, Evelyn," she told me while watering the plants. "His car was parked there. They say it's their tradition now. Every Thursday. Every Thursday." My son had a tradition of dining with his mother-in-law, but no longer had time to eat with his own mother. I swallowed the dry cry and thanked her for the information. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every excuse, every cancellation. And then I saw the pattern. Jessica was taking me out of my son's life slowly, strategically. The calls also decreased. Before, Henry called me at least 3 times a week. We talked about his work, his day, any nonsense. Mother and son. After the wedding, calls reduced to 1 a week, then 1 every 15 days, and always fast, hurried, with Jessica calling him in the background. "Babe, come here quick. Mom, gotta go." Click. I also started noticing that he no longer answered my calls. He let the phone ring until it went to voicemail, and when he returned the call, if he did, he always said the same thing. "Sorry, Mom." It was on silent. Once, twice, 3 times, 10 times on silent. Then I discovered by chance that he was active on WhatsApp, posting stories to Instagram, replying to comments, but didn't have 2 minutes to attend to his mother. The worst came when I realized there was a family group chat on WhatsApp, the Miller family, Henry's last name. I knew because Jessica uploaded a photo there and someone, probably by mistake, sent a screenshot to a public status. It was a photo of a BBQ at Jessica's mom's house. Henry was there smiling with a beer in his hand. The text said, "Family gathered is everything." I opened my WhatsApp and searched for the group. It didn't exist, at least not for me. They had created a family group, and I was not included. I went to Henry's apartment the next day. I knocked on the door 3 times before Jessica opened it in a robe with a feigned sleepy face. "Hi, mother-in-law. Everything good?" she said with a cold tone. "I need to speak with Henry. He's still asleep. He got home late yesterday from work. It was 11 a.m. Can I wait for him?" "Look, mother-in-law, today we have a complicated day. Maybe it would be better if you call ahead, so you don't catch us by surprise." By surprise? In my own son's house? I had to give notice before. "Jessica? I just want to speak 5 minutes with him." She sighed, annoyed. "Henry," she shouted toward the inside, "your mom is here." Henry appeared in shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt, deep circles under his eyes. He looked smaller, as if he had shrunk. "Hi, Mom. Did something happen?" "What happened is that you disappeared, son. We haven't seen each other properly for a month." Jessica crossed her arms, leaning on the doorframe. "Henry, tell your mom that you work, that you have a life, responsibilities." He looked at her, and then at me. "Mom, you have to understand that now I have my own family." The words came out mechanical, rehearsed. "I can no longer live only for you. I need to take care of my wife too, of my own family." As if I were no longer family. "I understand, son." My voice cracked. "I just didn't want you to forget me." "Nobody is forgetting anybody, Mom." But he didn't look me in the eyes. "It's just an adaptation phase." Jessica yawned exaggeratedly. Theatrical. "Henry, babe, I need you to help me with something inside." He gave me an uncomfortable nod and closed the door. I stayed there, standing in the hallway of that building, listening to my own steps echo while I returned to the elevator. And then came my birthday. 68 years old. My first birthday without Arthur. The first time I understood what it was to be truly alone. I woke up with hope. Maybe Henry would remember. Maybe he would appear by surprise with a cake, with a hug. Noon, nothing. 3 p.m., silence. 6 p.m., the phone didn't ring. 10 p.m., I crawled into bed. I turned off the lights and cried for the first time since Arthur's burial. At 11:47 p.m., the cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Henry. "Happy birthday, Mom. Congrats." An automatic message, cold, soulless. No call, no voice note, just that. And it was in that moment, lying in the dark, wiping tears with the back of my hand, that I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for attention anymore. I wasn't going to beg for the love of my own son. If Jessica wanted war, she would get it, but not in the way she expected. Because what she didn't know was that a wounded mother doesn't cry forever. There comes a moment when she gets up, and when she gets up, she doesn't ask for permission. She simply acts. 3 weeks after my forgotten birthday, the phone rang. It was Henry, but it wasn't the voice I knew. It was a voice too animated, forced. "Mom, I have incredible news." My heart tightened. Incredible news coming from someone who had forgotten me for a whole month didn't sound right. "What news, son?" "Jessica is pregnant." Silence. Pregnant. They had been married for 3 months, and she was already pregnant. "Mom, are you still there?" "I'm here, son. Congratulations." I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "When did you find out?" "Yesterday we took the test and it came out positive." He was euphoric. "You're going to be a grandma, Mom. You should be happy. I should be jumping with joy." But something in my chest told me that this was calculated, very well calculated. "I'm going to come see you tomorrow, son. I want to see Jessica. Talk." "Oh, Mom, better not," he interrupted quickly. "Jessica is a little sensitive from the nausea. You know how it is at the start of pregnancy. But look, we are going to go to your house on Saturday. We need to talk to you about something important." Important. That word never came alone. It always brought problems behind it. Saturday arrived. It was 10 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and there they were. Henry in dress pants and a shirt, as if he were going to a business meeting. Jessica, in a loose dress, stomach still flat, a hand placed strategically over her abdomen. "Hi, mother-in-law," she said, entering without waiting for an invitation. "Whew," It's hot. Can I get water? Before I answered, she was already in the kitchen opening my refrigerator. We sat in the living room. Henry rubbed his hands, nervous. Jessica was calm, almost smiling, like a cat that has just cornered its prey. Mom, we need to talk about the future, Henry started. About the baby's future, completed Jessica, stroking her non-existent belly. And we are worried because we live in a rented apartment, small, 1 bedroom, continued Henry. It's no place to raise a child. Jessica sighed dramatically. I always dreamed of raising my child in a house with a yard, with space to play. You know, mother-in-law, apartments are so suffocating. I felt the floor opening under my feet. I knew exactly where all this was going. And we were thinking. Henry swallowed saliva. Since you live alone in this big house, too big for one person, Jessica finished. We wanted to propose something. The idea is very simple, mother-in-law, said Henry, taking an envelope out of the folder he brought. Jessica leaned forward. You put the house in Henry's name. That way you secure your grandson's future. She said it as if it were the most logical thing in the world. And of course, you can keep living here. We aren't going to kick you out of your house. Imagine, keep living in my own house as if it were a favor. Henry pushed the envelope toward me. Mom, we already spoke with a lawyer. He prepared the papers. Just need to sign. His voice trembled a little. It's for the baby's security. For the family. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. It was a deed of donation, inter vivos, transferring ownership of my house valued at $650,000 to Henry's name, without a lifetime usufruct clause, without any legal protection for me. If I signed that, the house would cease to be mine, and they could remove me whenever they wanted. Son, this is very sudden. Sudden? Jessica let out a hard laugh. Mother-in-law, your grandson is going to be born in 8 months. He needs a stable roof. You guys can buy a house, I said. Henry has a good salary. Mom, you know that with rent, expenses, and now a baby on the way. Henry lowered his gaze. I can't save for a down payment. Jessica huffed impatiently. Look, Mrs. Evelyn, I'm going to be direct. She crossed her legs with the posture of someone who believes they have control. You already lived your life, had your house, your marriage, everything. Now it's our turn, your grandson's turn. Already lived your life, as if I were a used battery that had to be discarded. And if I don't want to donate the house? The atmosphere changed immediately. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Henry turned red. Mom, don't you want to secure your grandson's future? His voice came out accusatory. Of course I want to, son, but there are other ways. Other ways? Interrupted Jessica. Like what? Lending money we're never going to see back? Helping with rent eternally? Jessica, please. Henry tried to calm her, but she was fired up. Not now, Henry. Your mom needs to understand. She stood up and pointed her finger at me. You are selfish. Selfish. You stay in this huge house, alone, while your son and grandson are going to live in a tiny rented apartment. What kind of grandmother does that? Jessica! Henry also stood up, but his voice had no authority. It's true, she continued. Your mom has never thought of anyone but herself. Look at this house, these old furniture pieces. She does nothing, helps no one, just sits here digging up the past. Tears welled up, but didn't fall. Jessica, I think it would be better if you leave. My voice came out firm. Perfect. She grabbed her bag. Let's go. But then don't come complaining that you don't see your grandson, because I am not going to bring my son to visit a grandmother who doesn't care. Henry stood still, looking at me, and then at her. Henry, let's go, Jessica said from the door. Mom, Go, son. Go with your wife. He lowered his head and followed Jessica. The door slammed shut. I stood there holding those papers, reading every line of that legal trap I almost signed, and then I understood something. They had already gone to a lawyer, already prepared documents, already planned it. It wasn't a last-minute idea. It was calculated. Jessica knew exactly what she was doing. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Ramsey, Arthur's trusted lawyer. Mr. Ramsey, I need an urgent favor. Of course, Mrs. Evelyn. What happened? I need to protect my assets and I need to investigate some things about someone. I understand. I'm going to need names. Jessica Christine Cruz. I took a deep breath. And I want to know everything about her. because if she thought I was a foolish old woman who was going to hand everything over on a silver platter, she was very mistaken. Mothers are not fools. Mothers are strategic, and when we wake up, the game changes. After that explosive afternoon, silence fell like a sentence. Not a common silence, but that heavy, intentional silence that screams louder than any word. Henry blocked my number. I discovered it when I tried to call him for the 10th time on a Tuesday night. Instead of going to voicemail, I heard the automatic message. The number you dialed cannot receive calls. I tried via WhatsApp. My message wouldn't send. A single gray checkmark. The 2 blue checkmarks never appeared. Blocked. My own son had blocked me. For 3 days I was in shock. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep well. I stared at the phone, waiting for it to be a mistake, for him to unblock me, to call asking for forgiveness. Nothing. Weeks started to pass. 1, 2, 3. I tried sending a letter. It returned with the note, recipient refused delivery. I went to the building where they lived. The doorman, uncomfortable, told me he had orders not to let me up. Sorry, Mrs. Evelyn, but I could lose my job. I returned home destroyed. I started following Jessica on Instagram from a fake profile I created, just to know about my son, to see if he was okay, and that was how I found out about the baby shower. The post appeared on a Thursday. Jessica uploaded stories with a pink and blue invitation. Gender reveal, our prince. Decoration expensive, custom balloons, a huge dessert table, and a phrase that cut me inside, only with those who really matter. Real family. I wasn't invited. I didn't even know the sex of my grandson. That day I sat on the living room floor and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since I buried Arthur. Deep sobs that came from the chest, the kind that hurt physically. I tried to send a gift. I bought a complete set of blue baby clothes, since I knew from Instagram it was a boy. I paid $150. I wrapped it in beautiful paper. I put a card, for my grandson, with all the love from the grandmother who still waits to meet you. Grandma Evelyn. I sent it via courier with return receipt. 5 days later, the box returned, sealed with a note attached. Returned to sender. Refused. I held the box in my lap and crumbled. Refused. As if my love were trash rejected at the door. Sundays became the worst days. Sunday was always family day, and now I spent it alone, watching the clock advance, listening to the silence of the empty house. I cooked extra out of habit, made rice for 3 people, beans in a big pot, and then stored everything in containers that never emptied because I ate alone. Mrs. Connie, the neighbor, started inviting me to eat with her on Sundays. I refused politely. I was ashamed to explain that my own son no longer wanted anything to do with me, but she insisted so much that one day I accepted. Everything was delicious. But when I sat at her table with all her family gathered, children, grandchildren, laughter, I had to run out before dessert. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried in silence so no one would hear, because that showed me exactly what I had lost. Christmas arrived. Arthur always loved Christmas. We set up the tree together, he and I. Henry, as a child, hung the colored ornaments. We prepared a big dinner, turkey, stuffing, pies. This would be my first Christmas without Arthur and without Henry. I thought about not putting up a tree. What for? There was no one to see it, but I set it up anyway. A small, 2-foot one. I put it on the side table in the living room. I bought colored lights, and on Christmas Eve I sat alone on the sofa eating a reheated chicken pot pie I bought at the bakery. The television broadcast Christmas music, happy families in commercials, children opening gifts. I took the old photo album I kept on the shelf. I opened it to the first page. Henry, newborn, 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Arthur holding him for the first time with eyes full of tears. I turned the page. Henry at 3 years old, dressed as a superhero at Christmas. Toothless smile. Another page. Henry at 7 learning to ride a bike. Me holding the seat. Arthur filming. Henry at 15. High school graduation. Tie crooked. Embarrassed but proud. Henry at 25. College graduation. Hugging me and his father. I closed the album and pressed it against my chest. Where did I go wrong, Arthur? I whispered to the void. I raised this son with so much love, and now he treats me as if I were garbage. There was no answer, only the distant sound of fireworks. Families celebrating and me alone, clinging to memories of a son who no longer existed. January arrived. then February. 6 months without seeing Henry. 6 months blocked. 6 months invisible. I started having dark thoughts, the kind one shouldn't have but appear in lonely early mornings. If I died now, how long would it take him to find out? A week? A month? Would he come to my funeral? Or would Jessica convince him not to go? Those thoughts scared me, but they also woke me up. Because one night, lying staring at the ceiling, a phrase of Arthur's came back to my mind. Something he told me shortly before dying. Evelyn, love is not eternal sacrifice, it is setting boundaries. Whoever loves truly knows when to stop accepting contempt. And it was there, in that early morning of February at 3 a.m., when I decided I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to wait for Henry to return. I wasn't going to keep being the victim. If they took me out of their life, I was going to find out why. I was going to discover who Jessica really was, what she wanted, and how I could protect my son, even if he didn't want to be protected. Because a mother doesn't give up. A mother is strategic. And I had 6 decades of experience. I had assets, I had intelligence, and now I had motivation. The next day, at 8 a.m., I called Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Ramsey, remember I asked you to investigate Jessica? I remember, Mrs. Evelyn. And I have information, a lot of information. Come today. He hesitated a second. Are you sure you want to know? Because what we found is not pretty. I gripped the phone tightly. I'm sure. I need to know the truth. Then, come at 3 p.m. and prepare yourself. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the living room mirror. That 68-year-old woman, gray hair, tired eyes, but now with a different glint. She was no longer the abandoned mother crying in a corner. She was a woman about to discover the truth. And when one discovers the truth, there is no turning back. Either you act or you become an accomplice to your own destruction. I chose to act. Mr. Ramsey's office was in downtown Chicago, in an old building with classic architecture. I went up in the elevator to the 7th floor with my heart racing. He received me with that serious gesture of someone carrying bad news. Mrs. Evelyn, sit down. He pointed to a leather armchair. Coffee? Water? Nothing, thanks. I just want to know. He opened a thick folder full of documents, printouts, photographs. I hired a trusted private investigator. It cost $2,000. He looked at me. It was worth every penny. I felt my stomach churn. What did he discover? Mr. Ramsey took a deep breath and began. Jessica Christine Cruz, 32 years old, originally from Gary, Indiana, divorced once at 27. He turned the first page. The story of being a successful influencer is a lie. Her 28,000 followers were bought. There are sites that sell fake follower packages. She spent around $20 on that. He continued. The supposed collaborations with brands don't exist. On her Instagram, there are photos with products she bought herself and then returned to the stores. Everything is staging. A shiver ran down my back. And her mother? The woman who supposedly gave $20,000 for the wedding? The lawyer let out a bitter laugh. Her mother is a cleaning lady. She lives in a 2-room house in Cicero. She earns around $1,500 a month. He pushed a photograph toward me. She didn't give a single dollar for that wedding. It was all a lie. I clenched my fists. So the money I gave was the only real money for that wedding. That's right. He nodded. The $18,000 for the party was solely yours, Mrs. Evelyn. That hurt more than I expected. Not because of the money, but because of the brazen manipulation. There's more. He opened another section of the folder. Jessica is in debt, deeply in debt. He placed bank statements, screenshots of conversations, and lawsuits in front of me. She owes $35,000. His voice was grave. Spread across 7 maxed-out credit cards, 3 personal loans, and event vendors she never paid. $35,000. And that's not the worst. He turned another page. Jessica has a record. He showed me a file from 2 years ago. She had a relationship with a businessman named Frank Patterson, owner of a chain of pharmacies, 56 years old, widower, with 3 adult children. Mr. Ramsey pointed to some underlined lines in the document. She ran the same scam. Got pregnant or said she got pregnant. Asked for money for the baby's nursery, for the house, for renovations. He gave her point fimotiva, null, and the baby never existed. Mr. Ramsey tapped the document with his finger. She faked tests, used an app on her phone to create fake ultrasounds. When he discovered it, he sued her. She returned half the money in an out-of-court settlement to avoid jail for fraud. I felt nauseous. Does Henry know this? No. He shook his head. She changed cities, changed social circles, erased tracks. He paused. But there is something else, Mrs. Evelyn, and this is going to hurt. He took his phone and opened a video. Our investigator obtained evidence through legal and verifiable sources, public records, testimonies, and material she herself had left exposed. It wasn't magic. It was patience and method. He hesitated a second. Do you really want to see it? I want to. He pressed play. It was a video recorded inside a bedroom. Jessica was with her back turned, taking something off her waist, a fake silicone belly. She laughed, threw it into the closet, and said to the camera, "Sick of this crap." But in another 2 months, we closed the trap. My blood ran cold. She's not pregnant, confirmed Mr. Ramsey. And there are audio recordings. He played an audio file on the phone, Jessica's voice, clear. "Babe, listen to me. Your mom is hoarding the money, but I know she has it. I saw the folders in the drawer. That old woman has much more money than she appears to. We just have to pressure her." Henry's voice, insecure. "What plan B, Jess?" Her voice, interdiction, guardianship. "We get some medical opinions, say she has Alzheimer's, senile dementia, those things. You become her legal guardian, and we keep everything." I stopped breathing. She was planning to have me committed by force. "Exactly," confirmed Mr. Ramsey, turning off the audio. "And there's more. She has a lover." He showed me photographs. Jessica kissing another man. Young, muscular, tattooed. Personal trainer at a gym on the South Side. His name is Ryan. They see each other every Tuesday and Thursday while Henry is working. I looked at all that evidence scattered on the table. Lies, debts, previous scams, fake pregnancy, infidelity, plan for guardianship. Jessica wasn't just a gold digger, she was a criminal. "Mr. Ramsey, does Henry know any of this?" "Nothing." He shook his head. "Your son is completely deceived. She manipulates him psychologically. It's a classic case of emotional abuse. Isolate, create dependency, distort reality. I need to show him. He won't believe you." He was direct. "She already put it in his head that you are the problem. If you arrive now with these proofs, he's going to think it's a lie, that you invented everything out of jealousy. Then what do?" He crossed his fingers on the desk. "Wait for the right moment. When he is vulnerable, when her mask falls off on its own, then you act." I gathered all the evidence. Mr. Ramsey copied everything onto a USB drive, printed the main documents, saved the videos and audios. "Guard this as if it were gold, Mrs. Evelyn," he warned me. "And don't tell anyone. Anyone. If it leaks that you know, she will accelerate the plans and might do something worse." I left that office with a folder under my arm and a weight on my chest. During the ride back home, I couldn't stop thinking. My son was being destroyed by that woman financially and emotionally. And I, his mother, was watching from afar, blocked, excluded. But now I had weapons. I had the truth. I had evidence. I just needed the right moment. I arrived home, locked the door, drew the curtains, opened the folder, and reread every document. I watched the videos again, listened to the audios. And then at the bottom of the folder, I found something else. Mr. Ramsey had left a handwritten note. "Mrs. Evelyn, Arthur asked me once to protect you if something ever happened. He was my friend for 40 years. I promised him, this information is your armor. Use it with wisdom, but use it." I held that note and cried, but it wasn't a cry of pain. It was a cry of strength. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth, at the right moment, destroys any lie. Only one thing was missing. The perfect opportunity. And it would arrive at the door of a church, the day my son believed he was starting his life, when in reality he was about to see everything crumble. Almost half a year of absolute silence. 6 months without a single word from my son, until one Tuesday at 11 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I was about to not answer. I thought it was spam, but something made me press the green button. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Heavy breathing. "Hello?" I repeated. "Mom." The voice was low, broken. "It's me, Henry." My heart accelerated. I sat on the bed, gripping the phone tightly. Son, He paused. Someone could be heard sobbing. I know it's been a long time since we talked. 6 months. Half a year of blocking, of pain, of abandonment. And he summarized it as a long time. I'm listening, son. Another long silence. I heard muffled voices in the background. One of them was undoubtedly Jessica's. It's about the wedding. The church one, he said quickly. It's in 3 days, Saturday. 3 days, and he was notifying me just now. Jessica. He hesitated. She says, you can come if you want. If you want. As if it were a favor, a generous concession from her. Why the change of mind, son? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. It's just that, he stammered. Jessica's family asked where the groom's mom was, and it felt weird explaining that you weren't going, so she thought it was better to invite you. I understood everything in that instant. It wasn't an invitation, it was an image play. Jessica didn't want to look like the villain who had alienated the groom from his mother. She needed me there for appearances. I understand. I took a deep breath. I'll be there, son. Truly. He sounded surprised, as if expecting me to refuse. Really? Really? I wouldn't miss my only son's wedding. Okay. His voice sounded strange, without emotion, mechanical. It's at 3 p.m. at Our Lady of Grace Church in Lincoln Park. I'll be there, Mom. He started, but a female voice interrupted him in the background. Henry, hang up that phone now. I have to go. See you Saturday. And he hung up. I stood with the phone in my hand, processing. 3 days. 3 days until the moment I had waited for 6 months. I got up and went to the closet, where I kept the folder Mr. Ramsey had given me. I took out the USB drive with all the evidence, videos, audios, documents, photos, everything that demonstrated who Jessica really was. But how would I give it to Henry? He wasn't going to listen to me. If I arrived with accusations, he would kick me out before even seeing the evidence. It had to be something he couldn't ignore. Something he would open out of curiosity, out of impulse. And then an idea occurred to me. The next day I sought out an IT technician Mr. Ramsey had recommended. A young man of about 30, long hair, thick glasses. Mrs. Evelyn, he greeted me at the door of his small office. Mr. Ramsey called me. He told me you need a delicate service. I need to put files on my son's phone, I explained, but in a way that he can only open them at a specific time. He scratched his chin. Scheduled message with protected files. Exactly. Can it be done? He nodded, but I'm going to need access to the device or the cloud credentials. I took an old photo out of my purse. Henry as a teenager with the mutt dog we had for years. The dog was named Buster, I said. My son used passwords related to him. Buster 2010, Buster 123, variations like that. He was always sentimental with his passwords. The young man smiled. I'm going to try. Give me the cell number and email. I gave him the information. He started typing fast. He tried 5, 6 combinations. On the 7th, he guessed right. I'm into his iCloud, he announced victoriously. Now we just have to program the message. I handed him the USB drive. I want him to receive all this at 3:10 p.m. on Saturday, 10 minutes after the ceremony starts. Done. He worked for 40 minutes, creating a message that would remain invisible until the scheduled time. Ready. On Saturday at 3:10, a notification will appear on his phone. When he opens it, he will have access to a folder with all these files. Can he delete them? No. Before he sees at least a part, the message will open automatically in full screen, he assured me, and even if he tries to delete something, the files will already be downloaded to his phone. I paid $500 in cash. He guaranteed absolute confidentiality. I returned home with my heart racing. Everything was ready. Saturday arrived faster than I imagined. I woke up at 6 a.m., took a long bath, spent 2 hours getting ready, put on the deep teal dress I had bought. I went to the salon, did my nails, hair, light makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror before leaving. I looked like a happy mother heading to her son's wedding, but inside I was a strategist going to war. I ordered an Uber. The driver, a kind gentleman, tried to chat about the wedding. I feigned enthusiasm. When we arrived at the church, my stomach turned. It was beautiful. White flowers everywhere, red carpet at the entrance, elegant guests arriving in luxury cars. I saw Jessica from afar, giving instructions to photographers. The wedding dress was exaggerated, full of rhinestones, a 10-foot train. Must have cost a fortune. My fortune? Probably. I started climbing the steps and then Henry appeared in the doorway. It was then that everything I had planned, everything I had rehearsed, everything I thought I would say, simply happened. He stopped me. The guards crossed their arms and I heard those words that will haunt me forever. I didn't invite you, Mom. The whole family decided that you are no longer part of us. Please, leave. I looked my son in the eyes and saw a stranger. That's fine, son. My voice came out calm, firm, but don't forget to check your phone. Confusion crossed his face, but I was already walking down the steps, head high, posture impeccable. I got into the Uber and asked him to take me home. The driver noticed my expression. Are you okay, ma'am? I'm fine. I smiled through tears. For the first time in months, I'm fine. Because at 3:10, when my son opened that phone and saw the truth, everything Jessica had built with lies would come down. And I wouldn't have to say a single word. The truth would speak for me. And when the truth screams, no lie resists, no manipulation survives, no villain escapes. I arrived home at 3:05, 5 minutes before the bomb exploded. I sat on the sofa with a glass of water in my hand. My fingers were trembling. I watched the clock on the wall. Every second was an eternity. 3:08. Sandaling Jofen, Sandan Shurfen. In that precise instant, about a mile away, inside that church full of white flowers and lies, my son was opening his cell phone. What happened at the church, recounted later by witnesses. Henry was standing next to Jessica at the altar. The priest was beginning the ceremony. The groomsmen lined up, photographers ready. The cell phone vibrated in the inside pocket of his jacket. He tried to ignore it. It vibrated again. And again. Jessica threw him an irritated look. The priest paused, uncomfortable. Sorry, Henry whispered while taking out the phone. The screen lit up on its own. A large notification, impossible to ignore. Urgent message from Evelyn. Open now. He frowned and tapped the notification. The screen went black for 2 seconds and then a folder opened. The first thing that appeared was a video. Henry pressed play without thinking. It was Jessica in their bedroom, taking off a fake silicone belly, laughing, throwing it into the closet. Sick of this crap. But in another 2 months, we closed the trap. Henry's blood ran cold. He looked at Jessica. She was in profile, smiling at the cameras, adjusting her veil. He looked back at the phone and swiped the screen. There were audios. Dozens. He tapped the first one. Volume low, but clear. Jessica's voice. Babe, listen. Your mom is hoarding the money, but I know she has it. I saw the folders in the drawer. That old woman has much more money than she appears to. His own voice. What plan B, Jess? Her voice. Interdiction. Guardianship. We get some medical opinions. Say she has Alzheimer's, senility, those things. You become her legal guardian, and you keep everything. Henry's hands started to tremble. He kept swiping. Photos. Jessica kissing another man at the gym, in a motel parking lot. Dates and times stamped. Every Tuesday and Thursday, while he was working. Legal documents. A lawsuit from 2 years ago. Fraud. Victim. Frank Patterson. Accused. Jessica Christine Cruz. Bank statements with debts of $35,000 in her name. Fake medical reports of pregnancy created with apps. And finally, a video message from his mother. I appeared sitting in the living room. Face tired, but firm. Son, I always knew. I always hoped you would realize it alone. But when they took me away from you, I couldn't allow that woman to destroy the life your father and I built for you. Your father's will is with Mr. Ramsey. There you will discover that all that wealth was intended for you, son, but remained under my safeguard until you were ready. $4. $5 million in assets, the factory, the house, the investments. Your father left everything in my hands until you were ready. But that woman standing next to you doesn't love you, son. She never loved you. And the baby, she says, she is expecting doesn't exist. You deserve the truth. And the truth is this. I never stopped loving you, even when you abandoned me, when you blocked me, when you kicked me out of the church today. I am your mother, and I will never give up on you." The video ended. Henry stood paralyzed, the phone trembling in his hand. The priest tried to continue. "So, if anyone knows any impediment—" "I know!" Henry shouted. The whole church fell silent. Jessica turned around, scared. "Babe, what happened?" Henry turned the phone screen toward her. The video of her taking off the fake belly was on a loop. The color drained from her face. "Henry, I can explain. Are you pregnant?" His voice came out trembling, but hard. "Are you pregnant?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to smile. "Babe, that's an edit. Someone manipulated. Stand up." The dress rustled. The guests started to murmur, phones lighting up, people recording. "Henry, don't make a scene here. Lift that dress now." His best man, Mark, approached. "Henry, calm down, brother." "Get off!" Henry pushed his friend and looked at Jessica with a fury she had never seen. "You are not pregnant. You never were." Jessica started to back away. You're crazy. And you were planning to commit my mom to a home." He advanced. "Steal her money. Steal my inheritance." Jessica's mother stood up from the front row. "Henry, son, you are confusing things. You gave $20,000? He turned toward her. "You, who work cleaning houses and earn $1,500 a month?" The woman paled. Jessica tried to run out, but Henry grabbed her veil. "You used me." His voice broke. "You took me away from my mother. You made me block her, made me believe she was the problem." "Henry, please." Jessica started to cry. "I love you for real. You love my money." He ripped the veil from her head. "And you still cheated on me with Ryan, the gym guy, every Tuesday and Thursday?" One of the groomsmen choked. "The trainer?" The church became chaos. People standing up, screams, Jessica trying to justify herself, her mother trying to calm her, photographers recording everything. Henry threw the phone on the ground and ran out. He passed between the guests, the guards, ran down the church steps, and got into his car. He drove on autopilot, tears blurring his vision. 20 minutes later, the doorbell of my house rang. When I heard it, my heart stopped. I opened the door slowly. There was Henry, suit wrinkled, tie crooked, face red from crying so much. He looked at me and collapsed. He fell to his knees in front of me, sobbing, hugging my legs. Mom, forgive me." He cried like a child. "Forgive me, Mom. I was an idiot. I hurt you. I abandoned you." I knelt down with him. I hugged my son and pressed him against my chest like when he was little. "It's okay, son. It's okay." "No, it's not okay," he shouted between sobs. "I blocked you. I kicked you out of the church. I believed her instead of believing you. You were manipulated, son. It wasn't your fault." "It was," he murmured through tears. "I chose her. I chose the wrong side and almost lost you forever." I took his face in my hands. "But you didn't lose me. I'm still here." He hugged me so hard it hurt. But it was a good pain, the pain of having my son back. We stayed there on the living room floor crying together for a time that seemed eternal. When we finally managed to get up, we sat on the sofa. Henry wiped his eyes. "Mom, what the video said about Dad's inheritance, is it true?" I took a deep breath. "Yes. Your dad left $4.5 million in assets. The factory, the house, the investments. He left it under my safeguard until you were ready. He only asked that I wait for you to mature." Henry shook his head, unbelieving. "And I tried to take the house from you. I tried to force you to sign those papers. You didn't know, son. She blinded you. I should have realized." He covered his face with his hands. All the red flags were there, and I ignored them all. Because I was a coward. Because I was lonely. "Why?" I asked. "Because I wanted to be loved," I completed. And there is nothing wrong with that. What I didn't know at that moment was that Jessica would try to land the last blow, and that 3 weeks later, the police would knock on her door with an arrest warrant for fraud, identity theft, and attempted extortion. But that is a story for another time. 1 year later, I sat on the terrace of my house, that same house I almost lost, and looked at the garden. The Sunday afternoon sun illuminated the trees Arthur planted 20 years ago. The smell of barbecue came from the back where Henry was manning the grill. "Mom," he shouted, "the meat is ready." "Coming, son." I got up slowly. 69 years weigh a little more on the legs, but my heart was light. I walked to the garden and saw the scene I thought I would never see again. My son, smiling, for real. Not that forced smile from Jessica's times, but a wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Beside him was Caroline. They met 8 months ago. She worked in the finance department of the factory, the same factory Henry now managed with me. Carol was 38 years old, had 2 daughters from a previous marriage, natural curly hair, and a direct way of speaking that conquered me from the first meal. No exaggerated makeup, no 6-inch heels, no posed photos for Instagram, just a real woman with a real life, real problems, and real love. "Mrs. Evelyn, let me help you with the salad," Carol said, approaching with a smile. "Thanks, daughter." Daughter. I called her that naturally now because that was what she was to me, the daughter I never had and that life gifted me. Her 2 girls, Laura and Julie, aged 8 and 10, were playing on the swing set Henry had installed last month. Children's laughter filled the air. We all sat at the table, that same wooden table where I spent so many Sundays alone, but now it was full. Henry served the meat. Carol arranged the girls' plates. I brought baked beans, coleslaw, and that special potato salad. "Grandma, this salad is the best in the world," Laura said with her face smeared up to her ears. "Grandma." My heart squeezed in a beautiful way, because even without a blood tie, those girls called me that and I was their grandmother with the same intensity I would be to a biological grandchild. After eating, while Carol helped the girls wash their hands, Henry sat next to me on the terrace. "Mom, I need to tell you something." I looked at him. "Jessica's lawyer called yesterday." My stomach tightened. Even after a year, her name still caused that effect. What did he want? "She's been in prison for 9 months. He looked at his own hands, sentenced to 3.5 years for fraud, identity theft, and attempted extortion. And now she wants me to write a letter to the judge asking for a sentence reduction. And are you going to write it?" He took a deep breath. "No." His voice came out firm. "I spent a whole year in therapy to understand that I was a victim of psychological abuse, that she manipulated me, isolated me, and almost made me lose you." He looked me in the eyes. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean being an accomplice." I took his hand. "Your dad would be proud of the man you became. I wish he were here to see it." He pointed to the sky. "I am sure he is watching." At that moment, Carol appeared in the doorway. "Henry, babe. The girls want to know if you're telling the dragon story before bed today." "Coming." He stood up, but before that, he hugged me. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, son." I stayed alone on the terrace for a few minutes. I took my phone and opened the photo gallery. There was a recent photo, Henry, Carol, the girls, and I, taken last week at a barbecue like this one. Everyone smiling, everyone real. I saved it and set it as my wallpaper. Then I opened an old folder. Photos from a year ago. Henry and Jessica. Fake smiles, rehearsed poses, emptiness disguised as happiness. I selected delete entire folder. "Are you sure you want to delete?" "Yes, I am sure." I tapped confirm and it was liberating. That night, when everyone left, I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea. The house was silent, but it was a different silence. It was no longer the silence of loneliness, but the silence of rest after a full day. I looked at Arthur's photograph on the mantel. "I did it, love," I whispered. "I protected our son as you asked, and I swear I felt a soft breeze run through the room, even with the windows closed." I took my journal, the one I started writing this story in 6 months ago, on my therapist's recommendation, and wrote the last line. "I learned that a mother's love isn't being a doormat, it's being a fortress. And fortresses know when to open their gates and when to leave the enemy outside. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable, that family isn't who shares blood, but who shares respect. And I learned above all that it is never too late to start over, even at 69 years old, even after everything, that as long as true love exists, there will always be a way back home." I closed the notebook, and for the first time in 2 years since Arthur left, I slept in complete peace. 3 years later. Final scene. The factory now had the name on the facade. Miller and Son Industries. Since 1989. Henry was in the office reviewing contracts when there was a knock on the door. "Come in." It was me with a box in my hands. I brought banana bread. Your favorite. "Mom, are you trying to give me diabetes?" He laughed, although he was already grabbing a piece. I sat in front of his desk. "Do you know what your dad used to say?" "What?" "That legacy isn't what you leave, but how you teach to care for what you built." I smiled. "And you learned, son. You really learned." He stopped chewing, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. Mothers never give up." I stood up and kissed his forehead. They just wait for the right moment to act. I left the office and looked back one last time. My son in command, strong, healed, whole. And me, the woman who almost lost everything, had recovered what really mattered. Not the money, not the house, not the estate, but the love of my son. And that is priceless. If this story touched your heart, if you have gone through something similar or know someone who has lived it, leave me a comment telling me where you are watching this story from, and tell me, would you have had the same strength Evelyn had, or would you have given up halfway? This story is a reminder that dignity is not negotiable, respect is not begged for, and true love withstands any storm. Subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next stories. Because here we don't just tell stories, we tell life. A big hug to your heart, and remember, you are stronger than you imagine. Until next time.